Welcome to part 2. When we last left off, we were reviewing and looking over a video of a legislature meeting where Representative Jarvis was trying to present his new bill, the FURRIES Act, to the Texas legislature. However, Representative Tallarico had a series of fair questions and concerns about the bill. If you are interested in how this whole mess got started, definitely check out part 1. Link will be in the description. Hello everyone, your friendly neighborhood demonic Ravenwolf October is back with another interesting topic, so let us get into it. While reviewing this video, I noticed that a lot of these questions that were being proposed against the bill were questions that any rational person would ask. This, of course, shows me that when this bill was being thought up, nobody took the time to think critically about this and think up all the possible scenarios and outcomes that could occur by passing such a bill as this. Along with the rest of the questioning from Representative Tallarico to Jarvis, we are also going to hear the thoughts of the head of the Classroom Teachers Association, a French teacher, and other concerned people who are speaking out against this bill. Last time we concluded, Representative Tallarico thoroughly debunked Jarvis's claims about litter boxes in school bathrooms, simply asking Jarvis to bring forward such claims. But since these claims are not actually real, Jarvis could not bring forward any evidence of these claims being legitimate. So, Jarvis could not bring any real accounts forward to present. Then, Jarvis tried to backpedal his statements by claiming he never claimed that these schools that he mentioned had litter boxes. Along with this confusing statement, his own school district confirmed that these claims were false. Since the litter box issue was thoroughly debunked once again in this meeting, Representative Tallarico decides to move on to the other non-human behavior that the bill mentions, along with its issues and very vague wording.
I want to ask you a few questions about the language of the bill. So your bill provides, includes language that prohibits students from engaging in certain types of, quote, non-human behavior, which is defined as including, quote, licking oneself or others, end quote. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I am worried that there are developmentally normal behaviors, things that any child might do that could be punished under the language because it's so broad and unclear. So let's just use this example because there are actual monetary fines along with your bill. So this is not just a humorous thing. There are real consequences. If a student eats Cheetos and then licks the cheese dust off their fingers, would that be considered licking oneself?
Yeah, that's not a non-human behavior if you're licking your fingers because you got food on them. That's kind of in line with the normal behavior.
But you're defining non-human behavior as licking oneself or others.
The question that Representative Tallarico is asking is very similar to the question that I asked in my video. Couldn't innocent people get into trouble by doing these vague non-human behaviors as described in the bill? The bill definitely has real-world consequences because you have to pay a rather lengthy fine if you do any of these vague, non-human behaviors. So, once again, I think any rational, critical thinking person would pose such questions, especially if the language being used is incredibly vague.
If it's in this non-human behavior realm, the intent of the bill is if for licking oneself for the grooming purposes like a cat.
So who decides whether the licking is non-human behavior? Is that the Attorney General's job if your bill becomes law?
The local school districts come up with their plan.
But all there needs to be is one complaint, and the Attorney General, the top cop in the second largest state in the union, is now tasked with investigating that behavior?
That's not necessarily how that plays out.
It would be very ridiculous if the Attorney General had to step in and investigate cases of a child licking themselves, which could easily be mistaken for non-human behavior, as Representative Tallarico pointed out. I find it interesting that Jervis's rebuttal to this possible ridiculous scenario, if a bill like this were passed, is that it wouldn't necessarily happen. Not that it wouldn't happen at all. It necessarily wouldn't happen. It could still happen, just not necessarily, whatever that means.
They don't immediately get fined. And then before there's ever any type of a fine assessed, they make sure, that they're in compliance with the language of what the school has implemented for their plan.
I mean, I would just hope that the Attorney General has better things to do than investigating licking or that kind of behavior among kids.
But still, one complaint about a kid licking themselves is going to go all the way up to the Attorney General's office? And even then, the Attorney General would have to waste more time investigating to see if this claim was true. And mind you, it can only be one complaint of somebody performing vague, non-human behaviors that launches an entire investigation of a school district. That's pretty freaking insane. I'm not going to lie. That's crazy.
So you have an exception in this bill for a student involved in a school performing arts organization. Is that correct?
Yes.
But what if a teacher wants to put on a classroom play, which is pretty common? So things like Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, one of the characters has their head transformed into the head of a donkey, but that wouldn't be part of a performing arts organization, so would it lead to a fine under the current language of the bill?
I'm more than happy to work with you on some language for that type of thing. You're more of an expert in this space than I am, and I'd be more than happy to work with you on some language that you'd feel comfortable with to add in here to make sure that type of thing is covered.
I mean, again, to be honest, I'm not comfortable with any bill that's going after a non-existent issue. What if a kid went to the Alamo with their family over the weekend and bought a Davy Crockett fur hat from the gift shop? Would wearing that hat be considered wearing fur?
It's wearing fur, but, the school districts have a plan, do they allow hats in the school or not? When I was growing up,
Representative
wear
Gertis,
hats to school.
is that there's no reason to write a bill this broad where the only exceptions have to be thought up by this body.
I myself wasn't so clear on the whole school play aspect of the bill. I wasn't so sure if children performing a play as animals in class was going to be part of the school exemption. But apparently they didn't think about that. I don't know why they didn't think about that. That seems kind of stupid. Gertis then tries to claim that he is being reasonable by saying we need to work together and work out the language. The problem is the issues, as in the non-human behaviors that you are describing, don't really exist, and they're not really issues to begin with.
It has certain carve-outs, Halloween, theater. Does your bill have a carve-out for instructional material?
For what if you're playing something on the TV?
It's
animal documentary.
It's common for teachers to use books, plays, films, songs that feature non-human characters to teach lessons. I was a sixth grade language arts teacher, so things like Charlotte's Web. For older students, things like Animal Farm, which of course is a political allegory told through talking farm animals. So if a student is reading Animal Farm and they oink like a pig or neigh like a horse, would they be subject to a $10,000 fine?
No, because that's in line with if it's in line with the curriculum that the
Is that in your bill?
This is talking about like I said, I'd be happy to work with you on making sure that we have things that are in line with normal curriculum that are covered outside of this.
Okay, I want to talk about the enforcement. Is it true that school districts are fined up to $10,000 for the first violation?
Another major issue that Representative Tallarico points out about the bill is the fact that the bill does not include any exemptions for actual school lessons or proceedings involving non-human behavior that may be similar to the non-human behavior that is described in the bill. Why would they not include an exemption for possible lessons involving non-human behavior that is similar to the non-human behavior described in the bill? For schools, mind you. It's stupid. It's just ridiculous how little thought was put into this.
Talk about the enforcement. Is it true that school districts are fined up to $10,000 for the first violation?
Yes.
And is it true that school districts can be fined up to $25,000 for subsequent violations?
Yes, that's what the bill states.
In this version of the bill, is there any accountability for false accusations?
No.
Okay.
So when somebody accuses somebody else of something and the accusation is found out to be false, the person who made the accusation is not liable? That's crazy, considering there would be a huge fine levied against the person who is being accused. And wouldn't that cause more false reports because you don't have something that can deter people from filing them? This is just irresponsible. And it seems like it would create an overflow of false cases that would be sent to the Attorney General for them to examine. Seriously, if they're too busy examining these ridiculous claims that don't exist, how are they ever going to have the time to investigate actual concerning issues?
So just a year ago, an individual accused one of the school districts I represent, actually the school district I grew up in, Round Rock ISD, of lowering lunch tables so that students could eat like dogs. Beyond the absurdity of that, the superintendent had to make clear that the school lunch tables could not even physically be lowered. But those false allegations caused serious harm to our school district and took time and attention away from the classroom, away from teaching and learning. Now, I imagine that those kind of frivolous tweets or Facebook posts, conspiracy theories, I imagine what those would do if they came with the full force of the Attorney General.
Lowering the table so children can eat like dogs? What? Well, this is certainly a conspiracy I have never heard of. And it sounds even more ridiculous and even more delusional than the whole litter box hoax. I mean, who in their right mind, well then again, they're probably not in their right mind, would consider this obvious lie to be true? It's unbelievable. It's crazy what people will believe. This sounds like something that a child would make up, and that's probably where it comes from. You guys are literally listening to gossiping children. I mean, if I first heard this, I guess I would think it was a child's misunderstanding of them lowering the tables to accommodate younger children who are shorter. But then we find out that these tables could not be physically lowered, which shows to me how easily debunkable many of these conspiracy theories truly are.
So who can make an accusation?
So the intent would be for a parent of a student that's in that school.
What does the bill say?
The bill says, let's see here, where it, a parent who reasonably believes that a school, district, open enrollment charter school, or employee of or contractor of that district or school is in violation.
So it can only be a parent that makes the complaint.
That's what it states.
Okay. So I guess the last question I have is, does the Texas Attorney General have better things to do than policing a child's actions in a public school?
You know, we'll have to leave that up to them.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Jurdis's response to this question is, I'll just leave it up to them. This essentially just confirms that the district attorney will have full authority over these cases. So it doesn't really look like there's much order to investigating these non-existent issues. It's apparently all just going to be up to one guy to sort through the mass of claims and decide which one seems more plausible, thus taking time away from actual concerning issues. In this next part of the video, we are finally going to get insight into people who actually work in schools, because yeah, what are their thoughts on all this?
Okay, I show you registered as Quinn McCall on behalf of the Texas Classroom Teachers Association. You'll be testifying against the bill, is that
Yes,
correct?
sir.
And I show you registered as Rachel Preston on behalf of yourself testifying against the bill, is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
And I show you registered as Sarah Beck on behalf of yourself testifying against the bill, is that correct?
Correct.
All right, Mr. McCall, you may begin. 2 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, committee members, thank you for having me today. My name is Quinn McCall, and I'm here to speak against HB 54 on behalf of the Texas Classroom Teachers Association, and my testimony does refer to the committee substitute. The bill's main focus is clearly to strictly prohibit non-human behaviors in schools. However, our concern lies with a provision that changes the definition of child abuse in the Family Code. Among the specific acts or omissions listed in Texas Family Code 261.001, the example of mental or emotional injury is edited to include allowing or encouraging a child to, quote, develop a dependence on or a belief that non-human behaviors are societally acceptable. Note that in the substitute, although the provisions regarding the Student Code of Conduct are limited to grades 6 through 12, this provision about child abuse has no such restriction. Teachers are acutely aware of their students' mental and emotional well-being and can discern when their behavior at school merits contacting parents. All of us probably did things at school when we were kids that we might cringe at remembering now, but tasking teachers with reprimanding students for these kinds of things and threatening the teachers with child abuse charges if they do not is a significant overreach. Adding to this is that teachers are mandatory reporters of child abuse. If I see a student from another class apparently being allowed to engage in these non-human behaviors, do I have to report my colleague for child abuse if I think that they're allowing it? Will CPS appear at the school and question them?
So he is asking a series of questions that I think anybody with critical thinking skills would ask if they read a bill such as this. He is rightfully concerned for his teachers and staff and if they would get fined or their school district as well. And yes, this is definitely government overreach by the state of Texas. Because if you're seriously going to put teachers who ignore a child barking on the same level as teachers who would ignore a child being sexually harassed, then you have some serious problems.
How would allowing a student to develop a belief even be determined? HB 54 would open the door to these kinds of scenarios becoming more than hypothetical. Also, note that the behavior is only abuse if it occurs in a school setting. A child might be allowed or encouraged to indulge in certain behavior by their parents at home and then be reprimanded for the same behavior at school. As a personal example, when I was in high school, we regularly played against the Bowie Bulldogs, and they had a habit of barking at us at our games. That's just some good bull, in my opinion. And their coach certainly allowed it, if not encouraged it. But under these definitions in the bill, it would be considered non-human behavior.
Yeah, that's a good question. How does belief get determined? Also, the example he gave where students are encouraged to bark at a rival sports team because their mascot is a bulldog is another excellent example as to why a bill such as this does not work in a school setting. Interestingly enough, in this legislature meeting about a school bill, we finally get a teacher's perspective, and she brings up some pretty good points.
Thank you for allowing me to testify. Also, thank you, Representative Tallarico, for making most of the points I was going to try to make, and better than I would have made them. I just want to add one example. As a French teacher, one of the tools I rely on is engaging students in playful ways, such as when I teach them about animals and translations for how to say animals in French. I often teach onomatopoeia as well. The sounds that the animals make can be very useful for comparing sounds in the target language to English to just aid in their development in the language, and the language in this bill makes me concerned about doing that. So thank you for your time. I urge you to vote against this bill.
All right, thank you.
Onomatopoeias are noise descriptors, and they include animal noises. So if this bill gets passed, could teachers no longer teach that? Or use that as a teaching method to teach another language? It's very similar to a question I asked about books that use onomatopoeias and animal noises. If this bill were to pass, would those books have to be banned from
Dear House Public Education Committee members, I am a late diagnosed, disabled, autistic commercial interior designer that has studied human behavior and psychology. I'm here today to urge you to vote against HB 54. This bill is ableist, discriminatory, and will exacerbate harm to students. This bill penalizes children via potential transfer, expulsion, juvenile justice program, or suspension. These are an extreme, inhumane response to minor, unharmful behavior. The punishments would be detrimental to the child's essential access to education. I've seen what happens when rules target the odd students. It leads to increased othering of the student in the form of bullying or harassment from other students and even faculty. I have a friend whose child was assaulted repeatedly for acting different, and this bill, instead of protecting the student, would have the faculty join in to penalize a vulnerable, misunderstood student. This bill is an attempt to legislate someone's personal discomfort onto another person. As a disabled autistic person myself, I can understand that some people feel uncomfortable by something like kitten ear headbands, but that doesn't make it wrong. Any behavior exhibited by a human is human behavior, even if it makes someone uncomfortable. When I stim or flap my hands to regulate, it's a human behavior. When I wear a creative article of clothing, it's human behavior. If I sit on the ground and say meow, although not a productive move in this context, it is still a human behavior because I'm a human and I'm doing it. I've experienced firsthand how engaging in this form of creative behavior can actually be a therapeutic and safer avenue to socially connect. This bill is biased, problematic, and illogical, even with the exceptions. Student behaviors that this bill seeks to penalize are not harmful to anyone. Students are growing, learning, and exploring, and it is to their own and our detriment that we would inhibit unique ways for students to express and play. Dramatic play is an essential part of curriculum,
Please wrap up your testimony.
especially for students, but even into upper grades, as I've cited in my testimony.
Okay.
Please oppose HB 54. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Members, any
I
questions?
think what she said is my favorite part of the whole video. She makes an excellent point by saying that this bill would essentially allow faculty to persecute somebody for just being different, which would be detrimental to the student's psychological well-being. You know, the thing that this bill claims to be fighting for? Does nobody see the hypocrisy here? Another excellent point that she makes is that non-human behavior doesn't really make any sense because the human performing it is always going to be expressing human behavior simply because they are in fact human. So there should never be an excuse for somebody to target somebody else simply because they are different. And making a bill that is trying to justify targeting somebody will only make things worse.
Sure does. Susanna Carranza, on behalf of testifying on behalf of yourself, testifying against bill. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's
All right,
correct.
2 minutes, please.
So, my main concern of this bill, it's like children are creative. Children develop thoughts and their personalities by expressing themselves in different ways. So it's like, how does it hurt anybody if somebody's just expressing them in, you have the old MacDonald had a farm, and everybody kind of sings the song along and makes sounds of animals. Also, somebody would find it weird that, kids have invisible friends. So it's like, what is the next thing that we're going to penalize for kids kind of imagining an invisible friend because it doesn't exist? So it's like, let kids be kids. Let's not waste tax dollars in crazy ideas that this is somehow devious or whatever. Just let kids be kids. Oppose this bill. This is just nonsense. Thank you.
All right, members.
This next speaker brings up a concerning question. Where will it end? Will we say that children can no longer have imaginary friends? Also, her point, although simple, is let kids be kids, which is definitely what this bill is against. If this bill passes, it will have restrictions on how kids can act and use their imaginations. And once you go down that path, where will it end? Children explore different ideas and have different ways of understanding the world around them, as well as learning about that world. And as I said in my previous video, allowing kids to use their imagination gives them some resemblance of control over sometimes a scary and uncertain world, is sometimes out of their control. Taking any aspect of that away from children is very damaging to their psyche as well as their development. In the end, I don't think you can control childish imagination very well. When you were a kid and you were told not to do something, how many times did you listen? Especially if that something was as broad as your childish imagination. Originally, I have more to say in this next part, but what this random chairperson says just doesn't amount to anything. He spends the whole time defending Jarvis and painting him to be a victim, but he does not talk about the bill he is trying to propose, which I think is pretty telling about how this bill cannot be defended well. Now, my videos did not contain all the clips of this meeting, but I do recommend you watch the whole thing. As I did in part 1, I will leave a link in the description. It was truly fascinating to me how much this bill missed the mark when it came to student and faculty well-being and education in general. Certainly in its current form with its vague language and the fact that it doesn't have any exemptions for actual school lessons, it's just truly incredible to me how this bill was even remotely considered. What are your thoughts on all of this? What would you say if you chose to speak at this legislature meeting? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and I'll be seeing you soon. Hey, if you enjoy our content, maybe you would like to help us support our channel. Every little bit helps. I would also like to give a special shout out to the amazing artist who did the extraordinary character stills we used in this video. The ever incredible Bleptarts. Definitely check out their artwork if you get the chance. Also, if you're interested in the flittering thoughts that go upon in my brain, consider following us on Blue Sky. And thank you once again for your support.